This is going to be a battle of the Beyerdynamic microphones. So what I've got in front of me is a couple of vintage Beyers. The first being an MCE84N and the other being an MCE86N. N just stands for low impedance, specifically 600 ohm, and C just stands for Canon, which just means it's got an XLR socket on the bottom of it. So both of these microphones are low impedance, low Z if you will, and both have got XLR connections on the bottom. One gets touted as a voice of God voiceover microphone and an exceptional snare drum microphone, and that is this microphone, which is the MCE86. And you will get to listen to this microphone in just a second, but this one gets a higher standing in terms of its reputation. The MCE84 didn't necessarily get great praise when it first came out, so this microphone was considered more of a sort of general use, general purpose microphone, and this was considered a good voice of God microphone. Now, what I suspect is that both of these microphones actually use the same electric condenser capsule. One just has an interference tube on the end, and one has an internal battery compartment for use with a AA battery. Machining on this particular microphone, the MCE84, is exceptional. It feels fantastic. It's kind of competing with the AKG C1000 and more modern microphones like the Rode M3, but it's a 3-position switch, self-powered or 48-volt powered cardioid microphone, so it's a general use instrument or vocal microphone, but like I say, it hasn't necessarily gained a fantastic reputation. This one, on the other hand, gets called a voice of God mic. So we're going to start out on the MCE86. You're currently listening to me on a Beyerdynamic, that you're actually listening to this voiceover now on the GM303, which is a gooseneck small diaphragm condenser, also by Beyerdynamic. But let's get on with the main event. The Beyerdynamic MCE86 example of a voiceover microphone, otherwise known as a voice of God microphone. Go through what it is, and perhaps with a pop filter that might be a good idea. So let's go and grab one of those. So this microphone is the Beyerdynamic MCE86N, and it's used often as a voice of God voiceover microphone, given its characteristic vintage sound and shotgun design. So this microphone is used on snare drums occasionally and is used in studios. It's built up a bit of a reputation as a nice sounding vintage microphone, as it has a characteristic very similar to the Electro Voice RE20. So that's the sound profile in terms of the frequency response and how it presents itself in audio playback. So once again, the Beyerdynamic MCE86N low bar hypercardioid shotgun microphone, and this is how it sounds. Now we are on the Beyerdynamic MCE84N, and this is a multi-purpose cardioid condenser microphone with the ability to self-power on a AA battery. It has a 3-position switch, on, off, and BC, which I'm going to assume is bass roll-off. In fact, let's check that now. So now we are in the middle position switch, which says BC, which I can only assume is a high-pass filter or bass roll-off switch, so bass cut perhaps. But that is the second position, and then off. Turns the microphone off, hopefully. Are we in off? Maybe off still works when you've got phantom power running to it, because we're in the third position, which is off. Presumably that's off for battery, but still functions if you've got phantom power running to it. So first position, labelled off, although we've got signal running through it. Middle position, labelled BC, presumably a high-pass filter. And the final position, which is just labelled as on. So we'll leave it in on for the rest of this test when we go over to describing what the microphone is with a pop filter. So let's do that now. Beyerdynamic MCE84N. It is an XLR low impedance microphone that is self-powered with a AA battery, or as it is now, running on phantom power. It has a 3-position switch, on, off, and BC, which I'm going to assume is a high-pass filter. I have a sneaking suspicion it sounds very, very similar to the other microphone that I just compared it to, which was the MCE86N. Although they feel very different in the hand, one being a shotgun low-bar mic, this being a standard cardioid small diaphragm condenser microphone, I assume they have the same exact capsule. Now I know that the transformer based microphone in this hand is slightly different because it has a transformer balanced output, so it can run on much longer lengths without any interference, but this microphone is designed to run in studios. So I'm going to assume that they have a very similar characteristic sound, and given that the other mic, the MCE86N, gets touted as a voice of God voiceover microphone, I'm going to assume that this mic is an equal, if not better, microphone for doing the exact same job, given its lack of interference tube. So once again, the Beyerdynamic MCE84NC Cardioid XLR Phantom or battery-powered small diaphragm condenser microphone, and this is how it sounds. For a direct comparison on the exact same gain setting, everything in the exact same position, we're back on the Beyerdynamic MCE86NC, which is a low bar shotgun microphone, and this is how it sounds. It has a vintage vibe and a broad frequency response. This particular microphone, the MCE86NC, has a slightly narrower frequency response as it's designed for voiceovers and for use on a boom arm. So this microphone gets used in studios for voice of God voiceover work, and I'm hoping that the MCE84 is a comparable mic in terms of its sound profile. This is the MCE84NC running with the BC switch, which I assume is a high-pass filter, engaged. So one last palette cleanser with this, the Beyerdynamic MCE84N.C with the bass roll-off engaged, and then I'm going to switch back for my final conclusions to the GM303 gooseneck. Okay, so we're back on the GM303 microphone. Okay, so this is where I have to draw two conclusions because I haven't listened back to the video yet. So in conclusion, the MCE84NC definitely does not sound like an RE20 like the MCE86NC does sound like an Electro Voice RE20. So this is justified in getting its title as a voice of God voiceover microphone, whereas this is probably justified in being relegated to a slightly boring general purpose instrument and vocal microphone. Let's do that all again in a completely different conclusion. Well, isn't that a turnip? As suspected, the MCE84NC, generally considered a boring instrument microphone, sounds pretty much exactly the same as the voice of God MCE86 shotgun condenser microphone. So given that this is a lot more practical in terms of its use, it's got its ability to self-power with the AA battery, the build quality on it is outstanding, the machining is beautiful, as you can probably hear, and yeah, this is a great microphone. So the fact that it's a little bit smaller than the 86 and the fact that it has the exact same sound, or very, very similar to my ears, means that this is a fantastic, also to be considered voice of God microphone, vintage in style, practical in application, brilliant microphone. I'm glad I compared the two. So that's it, that's the conclusion to this video. Obviously, if you see a MCE84 or MCE86, it's well worth grabbing hold of them because they sound fantastic. The microphone you're currently listening to me on is the Beyerdynamic GM303 gooseneck microphone. Might as well show you that just to round out this video for completeness, and that's going to be it from me.